Welcome, I'm Martina, your trusty guide through the pages of Camp Half-Blood and beyond. Grab your camp shirts, ready your weapons, and let's embark on this epic adventure together. This is Delphi Dispatches. Before we dive into the episode, just a reminder that you can send me questions for the Q&A episode coming up after our regular TV series episodes. You can get into contact with me via Instagram at Delphi_dispatches_pod, or you can write me an email at delphidispatches@gmail.com. There's also the possibility to use the Q&A poll underneath Spotify episodes and the comments on YouTube if you prefer that. Let's start with our Delphi Dispatches news part. And I would say let's start with the greatest news of all. It's theme park news. On the 12th of January, we actually got 2 theme park related news. First one came from Disney Plus Brazil on Twitter. They said there will be a Camp Half-Blood experience between the 13th and the 28th of January 2024, where there will be like a mock-up of camp, like in the show. We can play capture the flag, have archery training, and much more stuff. I've seen a few photos from there and a few videos. Although I don't speak Portuguese, it looks very fun there. So if you are from Brazil and listening to this, first of all, hello, welcome. And second of all, go if you can. It looks really cool. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's in Sao Paulo. And the second related news is from Disney in the USA. There, Percy Jackson arrives at Disneyland and Disney World at the same week as the Waterland episode dropped. In the Disneyland Resort, there was this Wall of Heroes digital photo experience. And in Disney's Hollywood Studios, there you can see like artifacts and costumes from the show. And I've seen a few pictures of it on the internet, and those things look amazing. Some of them are clearly not the originals because we know the kids took some of them home. Like Walker took the Riptide, I think. And of course, some other stuff. But you know what this means. If they're starting to incorporate Percy Jackson into the theme parks, it's gonna look good for season 2, but more on that later. Then we had a lot of things from Rick on Threads. Because I don't have Threads, I only get the screenshots that get shared on Instagram. 2 of his posts stood out to me first. The first one was about why they didn't include the spider scene in the Tunnel of Love. And Rick explained a lot about this scene, but the one thing that's important for me personally is that he said spiders will come into play in a later season. And the second one was, I think, it was either the day off or the night before the Lotus Casino episode released. It was a post of Rick being mad at the fandom, ? Like, at least he talked about how he cannot understand why some of the fandom are desperately wanting Poker Face to be in the Lotus Casino episode, which we now know it isn't. And that he doesn't want anything to do with the bad movies and some other stuff, which is, if you think about it, of course he would say that because it's true. Just, I also don't understand why this scene is so iconic for some people. I mean, yeah, I remember this scene is one of the things I remember most about the movie. But like the rest of the movie, it was not good. The best thing he said in this thread, post, whatever you call the thing on Threads, is normalize bad movie erasure. Can we make that a hashtag and use it for so many bad movies? Thank you. We also got the news via Deadline that the PGO premiere surpassed 26 million views total. So that's something really good. And I'm not sure where I read it, but I think I read somewhere that each episode also surpassed 10 million views in their respective first week of streaming. Which is good if we remember back that the first episode that released amassed, I think it was 13.3 million in the first 6 days of release. So, oh my god, numbers are looking good. Even though I don't have a frame of reference, they're looking good. Then today, because I'm recording late again, it's midnight. Today, Rick was live, or actually because it's midnight, it was yesterday. You know what I mean. Rick was live with Sajni Patel talking about the book that just dropped the same day the new episode came out, A Drop of Venom. And it was really like, it was about 26-minute long Instagram live, so they talked about a lot of different stuff. I highly encourage you to watch it. It's still on at least Rick's Instagram page, maybe also Sajni Patel's Instagram page. And they talked about a few things. They talked about what inspired her to write the book, what the book is about. We got to know that there are more books in this series in the works. One is confirmed since she has a contract for 2. But the series is supposed to have 4 books centering about like 3 sisters. Each book is concentrates on one sister, and the 4th is where they meet up again, if I understood that correctly. In that live, we also found out that Rick will reveal the cover of the next Percy Jackson book tomorrow from like me recording this. So at the point you're hearing this, the cover is probably already out and I will have posted about it on social media. So maybe it's not news for you, but it's news for me. I will give out a prediction. So I'm talking about either the American or the UK cover. The book is either going to be purple or like brownish orangish or green. Those are the 3 colors I have in mind. And either Hecate is going to be on the cover, since it's called The Wrath of the Triple Goddess. I want to see like the 3 faces of Hecate, or her moon symbol. And what else? Maybe we'll meet the weasel again. Or not, it's not a weasel, it's a polecat. I still don't know what a polecat is. Is it something like a weasel? Yeah, the weasel and the dog. Those are my predictions. Oh, and one other thing that's like general for the book. I will make predictions about that later. But maybe we'll meet Alabaster. I think Alabaster is his name, yes. He's a son of Hecate, but he's like from a side story. And the side story is not even written by Rick. It's written by one of his sons. I don't remember which one. And I really love that story. It's called Son of Magic. And if you have not read it, I highly recommend it. Now on to Percy Jackson socials highlights from like various accounts online, including Leah. We got some behind the scenes of the underwater shooting of the Waterland scenes, where we can see they have like this whole dive team to support them and make sure everything's safe. The Percy series Instagram account is like posting a lot of like picture slides and not memes, if you know what I mean. It's just the pictures with the text underneath, but not like in the classic meme format. If you see it, you know what I mean. And they're really going hard for us Percebeth stans. Then you might have noticed the trend going around. Probably when this episode is coming out, it's already over. I mean, now it's already over. I think this trend, it's ins and outs for 2024. Yeah, it's mid-January. Of course, this trend is already over. But we have Percy Jackson ins and out for 2024. I will just read you the ins and outs they stated. The ins are singing the consensus song. I can wholeheartedly agree with it. I'm singing this cute little song so many times a day. Then the next one is channeling your inner Persassy. Yes, and I love that the official Percy Jackson Instagram account recognized Persassy as a thing, not just something we as a fandom made up. Then the third thing that is in is making all food blue. I'm okay with that. I personally will not make my life harder to incorporate various amounts of food dye into my diet. So I will join this in spirit. And if I have the choice between a regular version of a food and the blue version, without any like hassle, I will take the blue version in honor of Percy. And then to the outs. I love the outs. First one is wondering how Percy landed in the river, referring to, of course, the fallout of the St. Louis Arch. Yep, we know how it happened, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. The second one is trusting the gods. So I personally trust in some gods. Maybe not these specific Greek gods. Some of them are better than others, namely Hestia. And the last one is my favorite out. It is holding out hope that Mr. D can get Percy's name correctly. He will never do that, so don't hold out hope. It will always be Peter Johnson, or, well, now I can't come up with anyone either. Great. Let's move on. We get another Mythology 101, so Mythology 101 Part 2. The first up is Hades. He's king of the dead, ruler of the underworld, god of riches. And then we have Mr. D, aka Dionysus. He's camp director, god of wine and partying, and also madness, which they didn't state, so maybe it's a reveal later on. Hermes, god of messengers, thieves, and anyone who uses the roads, and father of Luke Castellan. Poseidon, god of the sea, Earthshaker, Stormbringer, father of Percy Jackson. When they started saying father of Percy Jackson, I was like, oh my god, are they gonna say father of horses? Because I love it. I'm curious if they will like cut the father of horses part out entirely, or if it's gonna be like a funny reveal later on when Percy discovers he can talk to horses or horse-like beings just because his father created horses. Then Zeus, king of the gods, one of the big three, god of the sky, and he wields the master bolt. Next one is Athena, Anubis' mom, goddess of wisdom and battle strategy, namesake of Athens, and them including her in this one strengthens my prediction in we get at least a glimpse of Athena this season. Then we have Hephaestus, god of fire, blacksmiths and the forge, builder of Waterland and the tunnel of love. And last but not least, maybe least favorite, Ares, god of war, enjoyer of motorcycles, father of Clarice Leroux. Then we had the Demigod Diaries of episode 5. Most of this was filming the Tunnel of Love. Here we see that the boat itself was actually stationary and everything around them, like the water and the walls, was moving. And we also saw them jump off the boat. I think if I remember correctly, someone said it was like only one take. I mean, they could theoretically do it again, but it would like take very long to like dry everyone up and reset everything. So I think, don't take my word for it, but I think it was a one take when they jumped. There we see again the whole dive team supporting them. We also get some BTS on the Golden Throne, where we see the golden statue of Percy, which Walker lifts just fine, so it's probably just styrofoam underneath and painted gold. At first, Walker doesn't know how to feel about this golden statue of him, and then he asks if he can take it home. Which is like, of course you would ask, and I'm not sure if he did, probably not, because it's quite big and I would not know how to get that thing in a suitcase. Or where to store it at home. Just imagine it sitting there in your room. Creepy. Then we get another cast on cast video where the trio talks about who their co-stars were. They start this video out with Jason Mantzoukas, who plays Dionysus, telling us that he's like naturally funny, and there was one scene where he needs to yell at everybody to get out of the camp, and he starts screaming at specific kids. If I was one of those like extras standing there and Jason Mantzoukas started screaming at me, I was like, oh shit, did I do something wrong? And the next one is Adam Copeland, who plays Ares. And they say even though he plays a mean character on the screen, he's actually super nice. And Leah describes it like this. In the show, he's like a lion. In real life, he's like a squirrel. I love this comparison. And the boys are like, yeah, like a super buff squirrel. And Aaron is like, yes, a chipmunk. I laughed so hard when I heard this the first time. Then they talk about Lin-Manuel Miranda, that when you work with him, you see where all the ideas come from, that he's super smart about everything. They talk about J2+, who's playing Hades, that he's very funny, and Walker tells a story about these firecrackers that were like props on set, and he threw one of them on the ground, and instead of exploding immediately when hitting the ground, it skipped a bit, and hit Jay like in the ankle, and he like jumped very high or something, or screamed, I don't remember. Then, since I'm recording late again, I also get to see the poster for episode 6. We see the trio, we see Hermes, we also see the zebra, although the zebra is not that prominently featured in the episode as I thought it would. Then there's the letter Hermes leaves for the kids, with the nice writing of to the dumb kids, or to those dumb kids. At the top there's also the casino logo, and there's some like lotus flowers, and it's either like lightning or a wave out of lightning. And this didn't really fit for me. It looked like they didn't know what to put in that lower right corner, and it looks a bit weird. Then there was like this clip cut together of Hermes clips from this episode, and in the comments everyone is like making some Hamilton references because of course it's Lin-Manuel Miranda. So, but my favorite one, and a lot of people agree because this comment has a lot of likes, is from another Percy Jackson podcast from Camp Half Pod, where they write, and I will do my best Hamilton impression. Look at my son. Pride is not the word I'm looking for. I love it because it's not only the Hamilton meme we've seen a lot of on mostly TikTok, but it's also like not just look at my son, it's look at my son. If you go to this reel and look at the comments, you will see this. I also wanted to try something, but I couldn't come up with something very creative. Anyways, let's move on to something good, which are awards. The show actually has been nominated for 3 different awards as of the point of this recording. So one of them has already taken place where the series has not won, but were nominated. It was the Hollywood Music in Media Awards, where Bear McCreary was nominated for Best Main Title in a TV show or limited series. This was back in November, so even before the show came out. I don't know how like these awards work, so I don't know how they got the theme song before we did. Yeah. But the other 2 awards still did not like get awarded at the point of this recording. The next one is the Family Film Awards. There, Percy Jackson and the Olympians is nominated in the category of Best Ensemble Series in Television. Those awards will be, I think, held on the 27th of January. And the last award of these 3 that are currently out nominated is from the Directors Guild of America Award. Here, James Bobbin, who directed the first 2 episodes of the show, is nominated for Outstanding Directorial Achievement in Children's Programs for Percy Jackson Episode 1. And those awards will be awarded on February 10th. So as soon as we get updates or new awards or new nominations, I'll keep you updated. So I talked a bit about season 2. We still have nothing confirmed, but like I said, we got so many good things, like 26 million views of the first episode, temporary exhibits in the US and Brazil. Guys, it looks so good and people are so happy with it. And Disney, if you would cancel this series, and I hope to the gods you won't. Now I'm coming out with my business plan. This makes so much money for you guys. You don't even know. Like, it's a really good business opportunity. Give me a few months and let me dive back into my business course and I will give you numbers and things, okay? But one of the most important things, I think, for the possibility of getting a new season is the Rotten Tomatoes scores. Yes, the last thing of our news part, the Rotten Tomatoes scores. Oh, I love it so much. So not a lot has changed. The average on the tomato meter is still 96%. We're still certified fresh. There have not been any new critics reviews. So there's still 55 fresh and 2 rotten. And the average audience score has also not changed. It's still 84% with average stars of 4.3. But last time it was like over 1,000 reviews. Now it's over 2,500 reviews. So I don't know where like the cutoff is when they say it's over 1,000 as opposed to over 2,500. So I don't know. But guys, it's so good. And now let's go on with our Demigod discussions. Let's discuss episode 6 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. We take a zebra to Vegas. It is again a shorter episode with just 33 minutes, including credits and stuff, so about as long as episode 4 where we meet Echidna. And we start out again in a dream. We see Percy's headmaster talking to someone. And first you think he's talking to Percy. He's asking, do you think you're special, Lightning Thief? And he says that they can easily be replaced. And this is where we find out that he's not actually talking to Percy, as it would seem, but Percy is just watching through like the cracked door of the headmaster's office, and the headmaster is talking to someone else sitting where Percy sat when he got expelled. We can't see who it is, we just see like through the office window that's like there is someone because there's like the shadow that moved, but the headmaster, which of course isn't the headmaster but just a manifestation of Percy's like dream, turns in Percy's direction and acknowledges him, but this is also when Percy wakes up. Grover is just opening a window, I think it's a window overhead, to let in some light for Annabeth, who is holding a prism to create a rainbow so she can get a signal. And this is where we first encounter Iris messaging. She prompts Percy with a really nice placed seaweed rain to toss a drachma into the rainbow. He does so, and the drachma promptly disappears. Annabeth says a prayer to Iris, the goddess of the rainbow, and basically places a call. She says, "Show me Camp Half-Blood, Chiron's office." But instead of Chiron, we see Luke. What is Luke doing in Chiron's office? Or does Chiron's office not have a reception, so it places them just outside somewhere in camp? I don't know how the logistics of Iris messaging works. Or if you can like not accept an Iris message. Regardless, Luke sounds like far away and a bit muffled, which is like, yeah, that's actually how I imagined someone would sound from an Iris message, but not really how it looks. It looks amazing, but I was like always thinking it's like this swirling portal sort of thing. But yeah, this looks more realistic. Anyways, they are asking Luke where Chiron is because of course they were expecting to see Chiron. And Luke tells them that Chiron is holding camp together with both hands because everyone thinks they're going to war, and the Kevins are picking sides on whose side they're fighting on. If I remember correctly, like what alliances would have been made. The things I'm pretty sure, because there are like two sides, Zeus and Poseidon. I think Athena would be on Zeus' side and Ares would be on Poseidon's side. Those are the only two I'm sure of. The other ones I'm not, especially not Apollo and Hermes. I don't remember, maybe it was in the books, but off the top of my head I can't remember. Percy and Annabeth tell Luke that they encountered Ares, and that Grover deduced that he knew who the lightning thief was and was covering for him. So logically, he would only cover for his favorite daughter, Clarice. This is how like Luke deduces that Clarice must be the one who stole the lightning bolt. And our heroes say like Chiron should arrest her and question her. And then they give like Luke some backstory on their quest so far, and they start like bickering, arguing which thing happened on what date. And Luke interrupts them saying, "When did you turn into an old married couple?" The two of them are like not pleased with this, and Percy says, "Not to change the subject, but I'm gonna." I love it. I will use this phrase from now on if anything is going on. I love it. And Percy wants to ask Luke for some advice because they're going to meet Hermes. But before he's getting any of this out, Annabeth like puts the prism away and effectively ends the call with that, saying that Luke would just talk them out of meeting Hermes because their father-son relationship is not the best, to put it lightly. We'll get more on that a bit later in this episode. Then Grover comes up to them to tell them that he spoke with the animals and that they told him that the drivers are actually not very nice people and are animal traffickers. So we gotta help these animals get out of there. We find out that they actually have an escape plan of their own, and Grover is like gushing how smart these animals are, and I love it because we know if some animals would have like evolved just a slightly bit different than they did, we would not be like the ruling species on this earth. And the animals only needed one thing to help like their plan conclude, which is of course thumbs. I was like, before Grover said thumbs, I was like, keys? But thumbs are also a good option. And then we just jump cut to the animals roaming free on the streets of Las Vegas and basically causing a lot of traffic, and I hope none of them gets hurt. Grover says he put a blessing on the animals so they would reach the wilderness safely, and Percy is actually not worried about the animals, he's a bit worried about the humans, which I was like, fair, but the humans can take it. And I looked around in like what animals we saw, because of course the episode is called We Take a Zebra to Vegas. So the first animals we see are like an ostrich, a camel, there's a turtle, a wildebeest, a bear. Only like at the second shot we see the traffic and the animals we see. There is like a zebra running away effectively. So we see the zebra for like 3 seconds and it landed on the poster just because of the title. In the book, the zebra has like a bit of a bigger role, but it's the talking to horses part. I think Percy is like steadily and slowly growing his powers and not having everything immediately like in the books. But now our trio is on their own in Las Vegas. And Percy's wondering, how are we gonna find the Lotus Casino? And Annabeth just turns to him and says, it's probably the one with the big lotus flower on top. Yeah, if Percy would have just turned around a few seconds before Annabeth, he would have gotten that win. But it's another one for Annabeth, our wise girl. And I have to say, this casino looks amazing. I've never been to Vegas, so I don't know if this is like something a casino actually would look like, not in the form of a lotus flower, but this extravagant, because it has literally roller coasters going alongside the outside. So I have no idea if this is like realistic, but it looks fun. And as our trio is walking into the Lotus Casino, we get a good needle drop again. I'm so happy about these needle drops occurring throughout the series. And like I said, it's not Poker Face, it's Levitating by Dua Lipa. When the song started, like if you know the beginning of the song, there's like this just instrumental stuff. And I was like, I know this song. I've heard this song so many times before. And as soon as Dua Lipa started singing, I'm like, oh, it's that song. It's Levitating. Yeah. And I really like the song. But first we get a lot of like shots of the casino interior. We're like in the lobby and we immediately start to notice like costumes from different eras, and they all look so great. So costume design did an amazing job as always. Just love. And Percy says something quite relatable. I know we're supposed to be saving the world, but would it be unprofessional if we just hung out here for a while? Yeah. Percy Jackson is my spirit animal. But of course we have to focus. We have a timeline. And Annabeth is laying like down the plan, what they're going to do and everything. When Grover asks if Sally ever read Percy the Odyssey, and as a retort Percy says the graphic novel, which counts. Graphic novels, mangas, comics, audiobooks, all of these forms count. All of these forms of books count as reading. And if someone else is going to tell you that's not reading, shut your pie hole. Reading is reading. Even getting read to is reading. That's my tirade on reading is reading. Back to Percy Jackson. Grover explains us the Lotus Eater's lore. But they need to go in and find Hermes. Percy looks to Annabeth for guidance and asks her, what do you think, wise girl? Last episode we got our first seaweed brain. We already got another seaweed brain here. And now Percy's calling Annabeth wise girl. Yes, finally. Yes. And now the only thing that's missing is Percy calling Grover G-Man. I think that only happened in book 3 the first time. I'm not really sure. But if we have that, our golden trio is golden trioing hard. But back to Annabeth's orders, because she says, just don't eat anything. And they both look at Grover, who is like, why are you looking at me? I'm like, yeah, I would be Grover in this instant. If there's free food, you betcha I'm gonna eat free food. But in this case, I think I would manage to not eat anything. Then the trio walks through the casino, which is a lot bigger on the inside. And is this a reference to, I think, Doctor Who? I'm not a big Doctor Who nerd. I mean, I've seen a few episodes and stuff. But isn't that a reference to the TARDIS, I think it's called? Yeah, this is one of the few things my nerd brain lacks. But it's on my watch list, so don't come for me, Doctor Who nerds. Then they suggest to split up. Annabeth and Percy are one team and Grover is one team. Because only Annabeth and Grover know what Hermes looks like. Because they've met him already. And they will meet back in the lobby in 20 minutes. And Grover should not talk to Hermes alone. You should just come and get Annabeth first. Here's what I think. Don't split up again. We don't like it when you split up. But of course, timing-wise, we need to cover more ground. And also, why didn't Grover and Percy go together and Annabeth alone? We start out following Percy and Annabeth, where Percy asks Annabeth what she can say to Hermes that Grover can't. And we get a little bit of Luke's backstory, that Annabeth was there when Luke met his father last, and that it was a long time before Grover found them. She saw things Grover didn't, like Luke's mom. Here we get infos we actually, in the books, we only get them in book 5, I think. We get to know about Luke's mom, who is a seer, which are humans that can see through the mist. Which brings up my question, is Sally Jackson a seer? Because, remember, she saw the Minotaur for what it was. But those seers can see things that can mess them up and that are scary. They sometimes can also see things that have not happened yet, which I think it's not all seers, it's just some of them, and Luke's mom happened to be one of those. And Luke blames Hermes for these bad things happening to his mom. Then we cut to Grover, who out of nowhere sees another satyr in the casino. He waves at him, but the other satyr just runs away, and Grover follows him and catches up to him. And we find out they know each other, or at least Grover knows the other satyr. His name is Augustus. But it seems like Augustus is not recognizing Grover. He has something to eat in his hand, like in one of those bags you would normally get popcorn in. So maybe he's eating popcorn. And Grover just opens up to Augustus about how he was important to his family and that he found Ferdinand and that he only made it to New Jersey on his quest for Pan. And Grover is quite happy he can open up to Augustus about this because he doesn't think his friends will understand him. And at the mention of Pan earlier, Augustus said he almost found Pan here, which of course sparks Grover's interest. The long-lost god of the wild in a Vegas casino. Interesting. But before we find out more about this plot, we go back to Percabeth. Here Percy opens up to Annabeth about the weird dreams he's having lately. He said first they were just weird, then they started getting scary, and asks Annabeth if she also has these demigod dreams. He talks about the guy that shows up and talks to Percy, not like in a regular dream, like the guy knows that they are in a dream. And that today's dream was different, like Percy was listening to him and whoever stole the bolt. While Percy is explaining all this, Annabeth is looking deep in thoughts, and I think she's figuring out that there's more to all of this than they realized at first. And Annabeth sums it up with, "You're eavesdropping on Hades, conspiring with Clarice through your dreams." And what Percy doesn't get is that they were talking about what comes next. Like the war between Zeus and Poseidon was only the beginning, and that there will be something even bigger after that. And he asks Annabeth, what are we supposed to do? And Annabeth doesn't know, which makes Percy slightly panic, saying, yeah, but if you don't know, I mean, what chance do I have? But they just need to get to Santa Monica first. We cut back to Grover and Augustus, who leads Grover to where he almost found Pan. Grover doesn't know if he's even allowed to search for Pan because he doesn't even have his license yet, and he's questioning what Pan is doing in Vegas, and he's also very confused about it. At a certain point, Augustus forgets Grover again, and he offers him food, but Grover refuses to eat the lotus flowers, and Augustus is like, no, they're nachos. So he wasn't eating lotus flowers? Then why is he forgetting things? And then Grover starts to panic and wants to leave Augustus. He just remembers he just wants to warn someone, but he can't quite remember who he wants to warn, or even why he's here. We cut back to Percabeth, where we hear this guy telling the back end of a joke about a boy and a wave and a hat something, which could be a reference to the Perseus myth, because as we find out, this guy is actually Hermes. It's Lin-Manuel Miranda, you guys. And he just says, welcome demigods, and invites them to join playing craps with him. And Annabeth takes the lead in talking to him since she has met him before. saying they don't have a lot of time, but Hermes already knows that and that they need help from him to get into the underworld. Percy says, "Wow, you're a really good guesser." To which Hermes retorts with, "I exist beyond space and time, kid. Why do you think they put me in charge of delivering the mail?" Hermes tries to discourage them, saying they're not the first demigods to ask for help and then walk away disappointed. But Annabeth blurts out that they're friends of Luke. And Hermes' demeanor instantly shifts. He kind of teleports them into a quieter place, which looks really cool. You hear in the sound design, just sound effect / music change when he pushes, grabs them, and suddenly they're in a different room. So yeah. Hermes justifies this with, "Time and space are easy, kids. Parenting is something else entirely." He sits down at a table in this quieter area, and instantly someone brings him a drink, so they know what he needs. And on the back wall of them, there's this wall with a lot of ancient Greek stuff, like vases, armors, and shields and stuff. Looks really cool. And he invites the demigods to join him. He also says he remembers Annabeth from the last time he saw Luke. And Annabeth says she heard what they were talking about all those years ago, that Luke thinks it was Hermes' fault and that he hates him. And Annabeth starts negotiating with Hermes that if he helped them, maybe Luke will see that he cares. And this, I think, works somehow, because Hermes says there's a secret way into the underworld. He's helped others before, but kind of implies that none have ever come back. And then he tells us that he was warned to stay away from Luke and his mom. He was warned that no matter how much he tried to help, that he would make things worse. He did not listen, and it was bad for everyone, not just Luke. And then he says, "Do you know what it feels like to be so close to someone you love, knowing neither of you has any choice but to keep hurting each other?" After he says that, he touches Percy's forearm and gives him this really quick flashback. I think something similar happens in the last Olympian book, so book 5. And in this flashback, we see a car with blinking lights, so either it's the hazard lights or just a blinker. And it looks like it's parked in front of a school. In the car, we have baby Percy in a yellow sweater sitting in the back seat. And that's it we get from this really quick flashback. Hermes tries to do the same for Annabeth, but before he can touch her, she yanks away her hand and says, "I remember just fine." She persists and wants to know if he will help them, but he just says he doesn't get involved anymore. And Annabeth just says this was a waste of time, which they don't have. And she leaves. And when you look at her, when she leaves, you see that she's pulling out her cap. Percy stays for a bit and continues talking with Hermes. And Hermes says that she's right to be angry. He also reveals that it was Poseidon who warned him not to get involved. And that it is awful watching their kids struggle and feel powerless to stop it. But sometimes that's what parenting is. Percy doesn't really believe that, because he was supposed to meet up with his dad in Santa Monica, basically saying why would he meet up with him if he thinks it'll make things worse. And Hermes admits that it is very hard for God to feel powerless, and that everyone is just doing the best they can, which I personally think is not an excuse, at least not for the gods. And then he says this advice won't be much use now anyway. Percy looks a bit confused, and Hermes very exaggerately looks at his watch and kind of signals Percy, yeah, the time is running out. In the next scene, we see Percy running through the casino, catching up with Annabeth, who's already at the entrance. They look outside the glass door and realize that it is already dark. In the rest of the conversation, which we didn't get to see, Hermes has apparently verified to Percy that it's already Thursday, so the day before the solstice. Hermes kind of tricked them in wasting their time, knowing that it is running out. So Annabeth doesn't feel so bad when she admits that she stole Hermes' keys. This is why she grabbed her cap earlier. She went invisible and pickpocketed the god of thieves, which I just love it. And she says I'm multi-talented. Yes, girl, you are. They still have some time left before the solstice, which is I think on Friday, so the next day. And Hermes told Percy about the lotus fruit that they don't actually feel time passing here, and it's not food they have to eat because the lotus is pumped in the air, which makes them forget. But what they remember is that they need something before they can leave. They see Augustus, and Annabeth says, "Grover." Percy's like, "Grover got old. How long have we been here?" Which is like, yeah, I love that they're confusing like this random ass satyr with Grover. And they try to confront him, but of course he runs away again. Then we have like this classic chase scene, the Annabeth chase scene. See what I did there? Even though Annabeth isn't really in the chase scene. Percy tackles Augustus and demands to know where Grover is. And they find him in the VR stage, where they pull off the VR glasses off of Grover's head. And he at first is a bit like upset, like saying he was so close. And Percy can like sympathize, which means Percy is a gamer. In the books, Percy was apparently a skater. Here he's apparently a gamer. Maybe he's both. We'll see in later seasons, hopefully. And he says that they really need to go. But Grover doesn't remember them or the quest. Percy just shakes his hand and introduces them and says that they are his best friends and gives him like a quick rundown. Grover is super excited and they continue to like walk into the parking garage. There they're looking for Hermes' car because they are quite late and they have a time limit. And Grover asks if it is his fault that they're like late, and Percy just says it is okay, which is like, oh, my heart is melting, I love it so much. We also find out that Hermes drives a taxi cab and that he left a note with written on it, "To the dumb kids," which is of course the god of thieves would have noticed his pockets being picked. We don't get to know what the whole note says, we just get a few words from Annabeth who's like reading it. She mentions the back door to the underworld, some magic word, and the info that the map is in the glove box. So the map to the underworld probably. And that as soon as they hit the road with the car, they are travelers and the car will take them wherever they want to go. Which means someone has to drive the car. Grover is still not remembering anything, so it would be a bad idea to put him into the driver's seat of a car. So Percy kind of volunteers, saying, how hard could this be? Oh, this scene gave me flashbacks to learning to drive. I'm still a horrible driver, and it doesn't make it better that I don't get to drive a lot because I don't have my own car, and I usually just use my parents' car when I'm home. And yeah, it's been a while since I've been home. Percy immediately crashes the car and then wonders how to make it go backwards and crashes it again. Grover, in his perfect satyr manner, is very supportive, and he sits in the middle of the back seat, which is, I don't think, the best idea with someone who does not know how to drive, because if you would like make a full-on stop, you would fly on through the windshield, even if you're like seat belted in. Like on their stop and go way out of the parking garage, Percy almost runs into another car, or another car almost runs into Percy because he's not fast enough to run into anyone. And he's like shocked and angry at the same time and honks the horn like minutes, no, not minutes, but way later than the car actually passed. So apparently Percy is prone to road rage. Then after some more stop and go, we see the last curve before the exit. We're all very excited, and the music is very like thrilling and exciting, and the pictures are not. It's just like basically horror for every driving beginner. But Percy makes the curve and just has to go up an incline to go on the road. He's very happy with himself and looks at Annabeth. She's very happy with him and she looks at him, and immediately Percy's like scraping the right side of the car along the wall of the parking garage, trying to correct like the way he pulls too much to the left, going over the crossing in the middle. Then he goes back, running over the barrier and thinking he's safe after the barrier. Yeah, they almost get hit by a semi-truck, or like one of those big 18-wheeler trucks. I actually don't know the difference between those types of trucks. We only saw like the headlights and heard it honking. Thankfully, we did not get hit by a freaking huge car because we're suddenly in Santa Monica on the beach with the car. So we literally got to our destination. The trio gets out of the car. It is raining, which I don't think it does a lot in California, so rare, which shows us that how serious it is because it is raining there. We also get to know that Grover finally remembers, and the first thing he says is, "You are my best friends," which is such a nice callback, and I love it. And he's wondering why he forgot more and faster than the other two. And Annabeth reasons with, he was alone. She was with Percy, and like it's easier to forget if you're alone. Speaking of alone, Percy has to go and meet his dad alone. But before he goes, he's like unsure what to say to him. And Annabeth like reassures him, saying, "You'll know what to say." And then Percy goes into the ocean. We see Percy swimming in the ocean. And then he comes to this dark kelp forest. There is a glowing figure emerging from behind this kelp, and it's none other than the Nereid. And we get a really good look at her as opposed to the Mississippi River. I mean, we don't know if it's the same Nereid because Nereid is just like general for a sea spirit. But yeah, she looks really cool and has her like seaweed for hair. And the first thing she does is apologize and says Poseidon waited as long as he could. And that means he's not here anymore. And the reason for it is even more devastating than Poseidon not being there anymore. She said that the summer solstice passed earlier this evening. So it is like Friday night or like Saturday really early morning, which means they are too late. They missed their deadline. And Poseidon has gone to gather his forces to prepare for war. And that she's just a messenger saying, "This is not your fault. You were brave. You were strong. You made your father proud. Now it is time for you to return to camp." But Percy, much like myself, do not agree. Percy refuses. I'm like, oh no, what is gonna happen? Because in the books they make it in time. So whatever comes next is like also totally new for us book readers, and I really like it, but more on that later. And this is also the first time that Percy speaks underwater, which by the way looks so cool. He's saying that he's going to see this through. Although he is released from his quest, he doesn't care. This is too important. The war is only the beginning, and there's something even worse coming. Percy has to stop Hades, and he asks her for help. She just says that Percy is just as willful as his father, that there's so much of Poseidon in Percy. She says, "What belongs to the sea can always return." My fellow musical people, if you know this quote from the Lightning Thief musical, what belongs to the sea can always return to the sea. It's a seashell. The Nereid swims closer and gives Percy 4 pearls, saying each of them will provide one person safe passage out of the underworld. Percy is a bit confused why 4. And the last thing we see in this episode, well, we hear in this episode, is the Nereid saying, "Save the world and then go save your mother." It gave me chills. It is so good. Oh, I love it. Yes, we're gonna save Sally. We love Sally Jackson and we're gonna save her. But before we go on to thoughts, feelings, Easter eggs and theories and so on, we'll look what's up ahead next week in our teasers. The first picture we get is Percy alone in Krusty's waterbed palace. So I said in my trailer prediction that I think if they're gonna cut anything, it's this. Well, I was wrong. We see the underworld, and first I thought it could be another dream, but logically I don't think they have time to go to sleep until they reach the underworld. So it's probably the underworld, because it's like this desert looking place, same as in Percy's earlier dreams. And there are like these stones from the ceiling and it's really gloomy. We see Percy with this red ball in hand and Cerberus, huge Cerberus but cute Cerberus, jumping from like nowhere up, and Percy and Grover stumbling back from the cliff's edge they were standing at. We see them running through some sort of forest. My best guess it's the fields of Asphodel. We see Grover being dragged down a pit. We hear voice over Percy saying, "After we get the bolt, you guys are leaving with my mom. Then we see a few shots of Annabeth alone, her hanging on the side of a cliff, her alone in the woods, looking up at this scary looking figure without any like distinct features. Then we have Percy and Grover again in front of a huge stone gate that is like slowly opening, and voiceover Grover saying, "What about you? What about you?" And the last shot we get is the trio on the beach facing Ares, who's like really cool looking with his awesome sword. And Percy's last words in this teaser for next week is a voiceover of him saying, "Hold fast, Mom." I'm so excited for next week. I'm telling you, those last 2 episodes are gonna rip my heart out, squeeze it very tight, break it, put it back in, and repeat as often as possible. Now that we covered what happened, let's look at my predictions, how much of them happened actually. Let's start with the things I got right. Iris message to camp. Check. We get to Vegas. Check. In the casino we meet Hermes. Check. We fall into a time trap. Check. We try to get out and get out. Check. We steal a car. Check. And we get to Santa Monica. Also check. Then some things I marked as meh is one, is like having a dream again. We did have a dream again, but I said like, since we saw Percy in last week's teaser underwater, I said this was either Santa Monica or a dream. It was Santa Monica, not a dream, so that's why meh. The other meh is a D'Angelo siblings Easter egg. I'm marking this as a meh because we don't have like an official confirmation, but there is something. I will talk about it extensively in the Easter eggs part. Just wait a few seconds. Then, what did not happen? We did not get to know what else Percy and Neri talked about the first time they met, if they even talked at all. We did not get to meet a personal driver of Hermes. Apparently, well, I think the personal driver doesn't exist, or Ares like thought of the car itself as a personal driver. I'm not sure. It was not a musical episode, unfortunately, but theoretically we still have 4 seasons to go, so there could be a musical episode anytime. Or if we're so lucky and get a Heroes of Olympus and Trials of Apollo adaptation, we will get a lot of songs in Trials of Apollo, so I will be happy with that as well. And as far as I've seen, there's no cameo of Chris McCarroll, so, or if you have seen him, please let me know, but I don't think there's a cameo of him in this episode. Now let's see what next episode holds. Like the general stuff is I'm still holding on to my Athena theory until the very last second of the very last episode, which is in 2 weeks. And I will either be proven really right because I knew it from the first time I saw the credits, or really wrong, being outed, looking really dumb for believing something. But yeah, that's what the theories are for. Specifically for next episode, I think that we will change the way we get into the underworld, because in the episode, in the like letter from Hermes, Annabeth mentions a backdoor to the underworld. So I don't think we'll go through the like music label and Charon as we know it from the books. Maybe Krusty's is like the back door to the underworld, Hermes has mentioned. Otherwise, I don't see really a reason why we're going to Krusty's. Speaking of Krusty, we don't know who plays Krusty yet. I think it's gonna be like a celebrity cameo, and I think it's Dan Povenmire from Phineas and Ferb fame. You wanna know why? Because sometime around when they wrapped last year, I saw either a picture or a video of him at the premiere, or talking about being at the premiere, or someone talking about him being at the premiere. It is somewhere deep, vaguely in my mind, and I couldn't find it. Like, if I like stumble upon it again, I will definitely post it on Instagram. But yeah, that's my theory. Another theory I have is, since a lot of the shots were just from Percy, or Percy and Grover, or just Annabeth alone, I think that Annabeth is either invisible or they got separated at some point, which like, okay, we're splitting up again. At least it's not again Percy and Annabeth on one-on-one and Grover alone, but thankfully Grover and Percy get some bro time. Then I think we almost go to Tartarus and we almost get eaten by Cerberus. Those huge figures in the woods are, I think, the asphodelians. I heard Tish Monahan, the costume designer, talk about it in an interview. I think they look really interesting, and I hope we get some background on why they look that way. We will of course have a confrontation with Hades, and we will discover if Hades has the bolt. We will also try to free Sally Jackson, but we will lose one of our pearls somewhere in the underworld. And when it comes time to leave, Percy wants to stay back, but in the end, Sally will stay back. I think they will keep it as it was in the books. And the end of next episode will be the Ares fight. And somewhere along the line, we will have a traumatic flashback. Well, actually, we'll have two flashbacks in this in this episode. One will be of baby Percy in the yellow sweater, which we just saw a glimpse of this episode. My reasons here for being just because we need to know what the scene is about, and second of all being a vague post of Azriel Delman on Instagram. And we also get Poseidon flashback or lore. I don't know if it will be related to this yellow sweater flashback or if it will be something different. We'll see. Now, the moment you've been waiting for, the Easter eggs. Yes, I'm pretty sure there were Nico and Bianca D'Angelo Easter eggs in this episode. I personally can't take credit for finding the exact ones I will talk about now. I'm telling you, I scrubbed through this footage frame by frame to find anything, but apparently I'm just not good enough. But still, someone did, and thank you for whoever did, because I saw a lot of versions of it on TikTok, so I don't know who saw it first. So the first thing is we hear Nico yelling Bianca. This is when Grover and Augustus are in front of the VR room and talking about finding Pan. There in the background noise, you hear this boy screaming Bianca, I think 1 or 2 times. You really have to listen to it, and the thing is, it could say anything else because it's not that clear. You can't 100% be sure that it is Bianca and not something else. And we also see a girl that could be Bianca as one of the people playing with the VR set. One of them has the VR headset on and is pretending to shoot an arrow, which is kind of foreshadowing for Bianca's destiny. So maybe this girl is Bianca. Who knows? We'll see. Or we'll hear if Becky or Rick will confirm or deny any of these theories online. The next Easter egg I also found on TikTok while watching the Nico and Bianca Easter eggs. And it could mean nothing. It could also mean everything. At one point where it's just Percy and Annabeth in a scene where they're walking through the casino, there are 2 people running through the picture behind them quite fast. And they have purple shirts on. Yes, purple shirts. If you know what that means, you've read the sequel series. I will not spoil that much. I mean, yeah. Should I spoil? No, I will not spoil. If you know about the purple shirts, you know what I mean. Look for them the next time you watch this episode. Okay, the rest of the Easter eggs I picked up on myself. Probably a lot of other people too. But I did something by myself. I think that the skill of pickpocketing is something Annabeth picked up from Luke while they were on the road. Because, yeah, Luke, son of Hermes, of course he knows how to steal stuff. And he showed Annabeth, because how else would 3 teenagers survive with nothing? The next thing also has to do with Hermes. It's his keychain. When Annabeth is holding up the keychain, we see that he has a caduceus as a keychain. And for fans of the books, especially if you remember of book 2, we know that the snakes on the caduceus have names, George and Martha. I would really love if those were George and Martha as the keychain, and when they're not paying attention or when they leave the key in the car, the 2 snakes will start talking to each other. I love George and Martha. They're one of my favorite side characters. Then, speaking of cars, I love that all the cars in the garage are from different eras, just like the costumes of the people. Also, their cars are from different eras. And there's surprisingly few cars in there if you think about how long the casino has been open, maybe someday they will just sell your car if it doesn't look like you're leaving anytime soon. And the last Easter egg I have is at the underwater scene itself. According to Rick, it was the last scene they filmed, the very last scene. And if you remember when they wrapped, there was this video on Instagram of Walker holding a shield of Percy Jackson season 1. It's a wrap. Please send help, I think it was. And that was the very same tank and probably also the very same day, which is really awesome. Now, my thoughts and feelings about this episode. I have a lot of them. Let's start out kind of chronologically. Maybe I will go all over the place, but it's good to have some sort of through line. The first thing I wanted to say is the Iris message. I talked about how I liked how it looked. I just think it's like, how to put it? It needed a bit more explaining. So Annabeth probably explained it to Percy off screen. And show and don't tell works fine, but I think it would be nicer if she had like talked a little bit about the mechanics of Iris messaging. The next thing is the animals. I'm happy that they didn't show animals in cages because, of course, that's inhumane. We love our animals, protect our animals at all costs. But I know from some interviews that the zebra we saw in the show was CGI. Maybe they cut something because the zebra literally showed up for like 5 seconds or something like that. And the whole name of the episode is We Take a Zebra to Vegas. So it would be nice if they had like put the zebra in a little bit more focus. Maybe they didn't, they had to cut the scene for reasons we don't know. And like I said, maybe they didn't want Percy to have like all his powers at first, like the talking to horses, which just comes naturally to him. Maybe it will come later in later seasons as he grows and accepts his powers more and more. Then Percy mentions that his mom read him the graphic novel of the Odyssey. Is there a good graphic novel version of the Odyssey out there? If yes, people, I need recommendations because I love a good graphic novel. I love that Grover in this episode is more of on the side of comedic relief. In the last episode, he was like really integral part of like driving the plot, discovering new information, being really serious and interrogating Ares kinda. And now we get silly goofy Grover, so we see like the wide spectrum of what Grover can be. Now we get to Hermes stuff. First things first, it is so cool that this episode where we meet Hermes for like the proper first time, I know we saw him at the end of episode 3 a bit, but in this episode we meet him properly and it came out on Lin-Manuel Miranda's birthday. Isn't that just great? It's great how the fates work sometimes. And speaking of Hermes in episode 3, like in episode 3 we had Hermes and Luke appear in the same episode. The first like demigod god pairing that fit together, but they don't interact. And again in episode 6, both of them show up, but they don't interact with each other. And just speaking of Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes, I just love him as Hermes. He does such good acting. And how can people act with their eyebrows so good? It's Lin and Leah. Those two stand out as top eyebrow actors. We need an extra like category at the Oscars or at least at the Emmys for best eyebrow acting. And the nominees are Leah Savay-Jeffries as Annabeth Chase in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Who wins? Maybe I should make this an Instagram poll. The next thing could be a bit controversial, depending on who you ask. The fact that Annabeth knows how to pick pockets is a win for all you Connabeth shippers out there. I don't know if that's the correct ship name, but it's Annabeth and Connor Stoll. If you've read all the books, and I think at least Mark of Athena, no, House of Hades, you know that this ship exists in the fandom, not canon in the books, but it exists. So this would be a win for that ship, that team of shippers. I love that they know they're running out of time, that it's already the day before the solstice, but they still go back into the casino and try to save Grover, which means wasting more time, which they essentially did, because friendship comes first. And in addition to that Percy is not blaming Grover for them missing the deadline and being late. And yeah, I talked about the car shenanigans. I love them. it looked basically like me starting to drive. I still hate driving in like small spaces, like parking garages and stuff, or even cities. I grew up on the countryside. Wide open roads, that's my jam. Put me in a city, I'm lost. That's why I use public transport, because there I'm not in charge of how to drive. I also love how it looks when Percy talks underwater. I've read a few like behind the scenes stuff from, I think Rick posted something how it all works, and it's so cool. Although in some underwater scenes Percy's lips look a bit bluish. I don't know if it's normal, I don't know if it's the lighting or the color grading or whatever, but it's only in a few scenes and it's like not really important. I also think that when Percy asks the Nereid for help, he's like indirectly asking his father for help, because he can't talk to his father directly, of course, because he isn't here. So he takes her as like the direct through line to Poseidon, thinking he's maybe listening through her or something. And they're like literally in the ocean, Poseidon's domain, so he can probably hear anything he wants. And I also think Poseidon has at least one ear on that conversation at that moment. Now to the big stuff, timeline shifting. I was so confused why they decided that they missed the deadline, because like I said, this did not happen in the books. So I was like, oh no, what is gonna happen? But after thinking on it, I was like, it's good that they change these things, you know? Because it also keeps us readers on our toes. The core of the stories are still the same. We get the same like growth of our characters, or even more or different kinds of growth, and I love it. And the fact that the Nereid gives them 4 pearls, signalizing that Poseidon also wants Sally to return to the world and live and be there for Percy, shows that he actually loved this woman once, maybe still does, and cares about her. And then there's the matter of the length of the episode. The episode itself was like around the same time as the St. Louis episode, but for some reason this episode felt longer to me and I liked it more. But it also fits that the casino episode, where time works differently, it's also like, it is shorter, but so much more happens in that short amount of time. It's like the casino but reverse. Now we will go on with our trivia trials. As you might have seen on Instagram, I posted the whole backlog of questions from the last few episodes, and I will continue like posting the answers, and I will continue as follows. Like, I will post the question on the day the episode airs, maybe around the same time the episode airs or 2 hours later. It depends on like timing issues and stuff, and if I'm awake when the episode airs, because my sleep schedule is fucked. So yeah, and the answers will always be posted on the next week. And there's also a highlight in my Instagram profile with all the past questions. But enough now of how everything works. Now let's go to the answers of last week. The first question was about Walker Scobell's birthday. We found out through some interviews that Walker always wanted to play Percy Jackson. He even has a special connection between Percy and his birthday. Do you know what it is? The connection is that in front of the hospital where Walker was born, there is a Neptune statue, which Neptune is of course the Roman version of Poseidon, aka Percy's dad. So, you see the connection there. The second question was about Adam Copeland, who plays Ares. And the question was, what is his ring name as a wrestler? And the most known is Edge. I understand that they're like a name he went before that, and now he's just going by Adam Copeland, but I was referring to Edge. If you got that, give yourself a point if you're keeping score. Now to this week's questions. We heard about the PGO experience in Brazil, where the series has a huge following, but who is the Brazilian publisher of the Percy Jackson books? We know in the US it's Disney Hyperion, and I think in the UK it's Puffin Books. Who is it in Brazil? And the second question is about Lin-Manuel Miranda. What was his first musical called. With this musical, he won 4 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. As always, you can DM me your answers on Instagram at Delphi_Dispatches_pod or answer on the story I will post about this question. Now, as always, let's close this episode out with some mythical music. Bye bye Lady Gaga and hello Dua Lipa. We are leaving the gamblers behind in the casino and levitate on out of there. Did that make sense? Anyway, if you haven't guessed it yet, we are putting levitating on our mythical music playlist because, of course, it's a bop. It's super perfect for this episode and it fits with the mythology. Levitating, Hermes flying shoes, you know what I mean. And that concludes another adventure with Delphi Dispatches. Thank you, demigods, for joining me on today's quest. Please consider subscribing to the podcast. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, just follow at Delphi_Dispatches_pod for updates and a fun community. This is Martina, signing off until next time. And remember, the real world is where the monsters are.